Chapter 22, 12s. By the time Calder and Petra stepped outside, both men were gone. There were no footsteps to follow. The snow was packed into an unreadable mass. "Guess we should go," Petra said. "Yep." On the way back to Harper Avenue, Calder and Petra made a plan. They would return to Delia Dell that night. Each would tell their parents that they were over at the other's house. "I guess we may be headed for a life of crime after all." Petra gave Calder a half-hearted grin. "But this is different. It'll be an early birthday adventure. She stopped short. Now Calder looked uncomfortable. "How did you know?" "How did I know what?" "My birthday." "What?" "It's my birthday, too." To Petra's surprise, Calder seemed more preoccupied than anything else. He was looking at the T pentomino in his right hand. T for 12. We're both 12 on 12/12. Why didn't I see this before? "Wow," was all Petra said. He went on. "It's a puzzle that hinges on 12s. There are the pentominos, of course, and the fact that we're both turning 12 on the 12th day of the 12th month. And I'll bet there's more about the painting or about Vermeer that works with 12s. Calder, you're either totally nuts or absolutely brilliant. Maybe both. And we have just about 12 hours to figure this out. Think we can do it?" "I do." That evening, the kids were crouched behind a bush just under the first floor windows of Delia Dell. It was 10 minutes to 7. The blue sky and white snow of the morning had deepened into an icy purple laced with black. "It's the post office man," whispered Calder. Sure enough, he was one of the last people to leave the building before the doors were locked. He walked slowly down the stairs to a parked car. Before he climbed in, he scanned 59th Street as if checking for someone. Calder and Petra got a good look at his face. As soon as his car was gone, Petra hopped out of the bush. "Quick!" They hurried around the building to the garbage area. The back door they had entered that morning was still propped open. They walked as fast as possible toward the dim opening and ducked inside. It felt like jumping into dark water. They could hear footsteps several rooms away and someone whistling. Petra grabbed Calder's sleeve and pointed to a giant file cabinet. They crouched next to it, hardly daring to breathe. The footsteps came closer, quick and heavy, and there was a grunt as someone put down a metal trash can. Both could see a man moving around in the shadows. Another 2 steps and he was slamming the back door, locking it with a double bolt. He switched off the light from the next room, leaving them in darkness. The footsteps grew fainter. They waited until they heard another door shut. Petra pulled the flashlight out of her backpack. It went on and then off. She shook it vigorously. Nothing happened. She felt the darkness clamping down on them and heard a noise like the ocean in her ears. The space around them started to shrink in an extremely unfriendly way. "Oh, great! Didn't you test it at home?" "Of course I did." To their relief, the light came back on. Petra kept it pointed toward the ceiling. Carrying the flashlight like a full glass of water, they walked carefully through the shadowy maze of halls and storage rooms. Nothing looked familiar. They must have taken a different turn. Calder was thinking to himself that spooky would be a mild word for this place. It made the basement in Gracie feel cozy. Both tried not to think about anything but the next step. The passageways felt endless. The flashlight went out once more and this time stayed out. Holding on to each other, they groped their way around the next corner. A red exit sign glowed in the distance. "We did it!" They made their way down the corridor and finally through the door. They found themselves standing in the big entrance hall. A high-backed choir bench in the center of the room towered above them. The moon had risen since they'd been outside, and light came through the casement windows on the second-floor landing. A path of broken rectangles and rhombi spilled crazily down the stairs, coming to rest on their heads of the wooden monkeys at the base. "Maybe it's good the flashlight's out, in case someone is watching the building," Petra whispered. "I was thinking the same thing." Calder glanced toward the banquet room and library. Feeling small in the darkness, They walked through the entrance hall and up several steps to the next room. They headed under the arbor of plaster grapes and into the library. The room was cavernous and lonely at night. Outside, students wandering back to their dormitories were talking and laughing. Petra and Calder felt separated from everyday life by a chasm of responsibility. What had ever made them think they could do this? "Let's start over here and stay together," Petra said. Looking for concealed closets or panels or knobs, they tapped along the south wall, straining their eyes against the shadows. It was slow going. They hesitated at the door to the dining room, peering into deeper darkness. There weren't as many windows here. Once in, they worked methodically, moving faster now. They pressed and knocked so hard on every panel that their arms were trembling and their knuckles raw. Calder turned, moving so quickly that Petra jumped back. "What?" No answer. Calder was running toward the stairs. Petra raced after him. "Calder, wait up!" He stopped at the bottom of the stairs and walked up 12 steps, counting as he went. "What is it?" Petra's voice was a squeak. "I think I figured it out. Go back down." "By myself? Hurry! Stay right under the 12th step." Calder was breathless, but calm. Petra thought she could see figures crouched in every corner. If she disappeared like Frog, it would be all Calder's fault. "Here?" Petra's heart was pounding. It was painfully dark by the side of the staircase. Suddenly she remembered her thought in the bathtub, a rectangle inside a triangle. She was standing against a huge triangle. "One step farther." Calder rushed down and crouched next to her. He ran his fingers over the surface of the wall. It was covered with small square panels, each about 4 inches wide. "A series of 12s, Calder was muttering. 6, 7, 8... Here." They tried rapping on the 12th rectangle and then on the ones around it. There was clearly space behind this section of the wall. They leaned with all their strength against the carved oak. Nothing happened. "Let's press more slowly. Maybe there's a spring or a latch." Petra started on the upper right and Calder on the upper left. They worked their way carefully down for several inches. They did this twice, each time trying to center the 12th panel in a larger imaginary rectangle. The third time, something gave. There was a splintery groan and a loud thump. The panel slid back into the wall, revealing a shallow storage area. Petra, trembling now, felt automatically for the flashlight and fumbled with the switch. Miraculously, it turned on. "Oh my God, Petra!" Leaning against the back wall, wrapped in a cloth covering, was a smallish rectangular shape. Calder took a shaky step backward. Handing the flashlight to him, Petra lifted out the object. The wrapping was velvet. Side by side, they sank down onto the floor. Petra began to unwind the fabric, turning the object first one way and then the other, yards of deep red falling in folds around her knees. She touched the corner of a frame. The wood was cool and smooth. She stopped moving. "You." The word was barely a sound. Calder understood and carefully lifted the last layer of velvet. It was a moment they would remember with perfect clarity for the rest of their lives. The flashlight picked up an answering glimmer from the pearls, from the satiny hair ribbons, from the woman's eyes. The image was finer and more delicate than either of them had imagined. Hot tears began running down Petra's cheeks, blurring her vision of the woman's familiar face. Hearing a stifled sob, Calder felt his eyes suddenly fill. At that very moment, there was just the 3 of them in the world. The lady, who was almost 350 years old, and the 2 children, who were almost 12. "Well, we'll get you out of here," Petra whispered, not trusting her voice. Calder, wiping his cheeks on the sleeve of his jacket, pointed to the strand of pearls lying on the table. "Count." Petra did. She looked shyly at Calder, aware that they'd both been crying. 10? "Oh, I don't believe it. The pearl earrings make 12. They gave each other a wobbly smile. What made you see that? Petra asked. I don't know. Maybe she did. Petra, still looking at the painting, nodded in silent understanding. There was a clearing of throats. They hadn't thought about what to do if they actually found her. Here's a picture of them finding her. Calder, it's so cold out. Do you suppose it will hurt her? I could wrap her in my jacket. We'll have to. It'd be worse to leave her. What if the thief decided to move her tomorrow? We'd never forgive ourselves. As Calder held the flashlight, Petra rewrapped the painting carefully in a long strip of velvet and then took off her sweater and tied it securely around the bundle. The wide frame made it an awkward size to carry. They walked across the dark entrance hall, both hardly feeling the tiles under their feet, and headed for one of the exits on the north side of the building. Scanning the edges of the door, they spotted the telltale red light of an alarm. I'll bet all of these main doors are wired, Calder said. We could try to get out through the basement, but that may be wired also. Or you could run from here and I could distract anyone who saw us. No, let's stick together. Maybe I should be carrying something too, just in case someone is watching the building. It doesn't matter if the police pick us up, right? In fact, that would be a relief. Calder reached down and grabbed a danger slippery when wet sign that had been left by the door and patted it with a stack of university newspapers. He quickly pulled off his jacket, wrapped the papers and sign tightly in his sweatshirt, and put his jacket back on. He held the bundle in front of him as if it were fragile. Convincing? Wait. Calder reached into his pocket and pulled out a pentomino. It's Y for yes. We're going to get her home. He tapped it gently on Petra's package. Absolutely. Petra was smiling now. Ready? Both took a deep and shaky breath. On our marks. Get set. Go! They opened the door and started running into the cold night air, the alarm screaming behind them.